you saying, Simon, the same sort of argument that certain people like everyone from James Lovelock to George Monbiot, when they talk about the nuclear power industry, that it's not something you may like, but actually, given the need for power urgently, maybe you have to do that while you're doing the slower build of the renewables?
I don't know if I am saying that. When I
Well, it
listen,
sounded a bit like we have to allow South Africa to build the coal-fired power stations to keep the lights on, so to stop the violence, to make all the other things happen while building the renewables, and people will learn to trust them in the longer term.
so there are two projects on the table in South Africa, only one of which has hit the news. One is the coal-fired power station, and the second is a nuclear power station. And so it's an interesting case in point. Do you build one humongous coal-fired power station, or do you build one humongous nuclear station? And actually, we're clear about what the carbon implications and differences between the two are, which is nuclear is preferable by a long way. But we're not clear as to whether balance, looking at the ecology as a whole, one would really push for nuclear rather than coal. The costs are much higher. The non-carbon related risks are much higher. And in fact, the industrial spin-offs for South might, in the case of coal, be higher than in the case of nuclear, i.e. the employment and livelihoods that they generate. So
Yeah.
I'm not a nuclear geek technologically, but it seems to me that there are many countries one-off nuclear installations may well not be the right answer, not only because of the long-term fears of nuclear, but also because of the underlying institutional competencies that are required to do stuff like that.
Right, thank you, Simon. I wasn't really suggesting a fight between the two, coal or nuclear. I was merely saying that the kinds of arguments that are being put forward by Lovelock, for example, Professor Lovelock, are, you may not like whatever this other form of energy is, whether it's nuclear or coal or whatever, but you may have to put up with it because it buys enough
Buys time.
and peace,
Yeah.
while you develop what you actually want.
I think that's right. I mean, so first of all, we're going to have to put up with more bad alongside more good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's confirming what you're saying. Secondly, we have to realize that the traditional multilateral solution is unlikely to happen either at all or in a way that is as effective as we would like. Thirdly, we have to realize that, like it or not, this is a discussion about economics as much as it is a discussion about climate. Fourthly, we have to realize that the power of change is more likely to happen at the national level than it is at the local or at the international level. What does that all add up to? To me, perhaps it doesn't solve all of the problems. It adds up to a reasonably simple observation, which is to leverage change now at scale, we need in major economies to have major national initiatives that, where possible, can leverage international cooperation, but don't require some complicated multilateral deal. Secondly, we need to look at this through an economics lens, because to look at it purely through a climate or environment lens actually misses most of the action of what the real negotiation is about.
Well, thank you very much, Simon. I'm sorry about the tech difficulties in the middle, but I'm delighted that we managed to get back to you and hear what you have to say and put so clearly. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure. Lovely to be with you again. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So, Jeff, that takes us back very clearly, I think, Simon's last comments, especially to this issue of what will make real change. I mean, that's the question he was really addressing and we all need to address. And his point about, it's the economic thing that will make the change. I mean, that's something we were chatting about a little bit earlier too, that, remembering, for example, in the UK, what have people really mobilized about in the last 20, 30, 40 years, since the war indeed, since this major threat of the war, what have people really gone out in the streets of their own accord without it being, those of us and our friends who are activists desperately trying to drum up some interest, but almost against the tide of where people actually want to be. They don't want to be campaigning about climate change. We had to kind of drag them kicking and screaming.